Theo sat on the bus, staring out at the rain streaming down the window. The city rushed by in a blur of grey, and his chest felt tight with the weight of loneliness. It had been months since he moved to this new city, and he felt more invisible than ever. Every day, it was the same routine. Wake up, work, go home. The world seemed to rush around him, leaving him behind. The bus came to a halt, and Theo noticed a woman struggling with her groceries at the stop. Her bag slipped from her hands, apples rolling across the wet pavement. Without thinking, Theo rose from his seat and hurried out into the rain. "Here, let me help," he said, collecting the apples and handing them back to her. The woman smiled, her face lighting up. "Thank you so much," she said. "You really saved me there." Theo nodded and returned to his seat, feeling a flicker of warmth in his chest. He watched as the bus pulled away, the woman's smile lingering in his mind. He didn't know her name, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like he wasn't completely invisible. Evelyn walked quickly, her groceries in hand, the rain drizzling around her. Normally, taking the bus filled her with anxiety. Navigating the city was always a stressful affair, but today, something felt different. The stranger's kindness lingered with her, taking the edge off her usual nerves. As she turned the corner, Evelyn spotted a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk, huddled under a shop's overhang. His clothes were soaked, and his hands trembled in the cold. Normally, Evelyn would have walked by, feeling helpless to do anything. But today, she hesitated. She reached into her bag, pulling out a couple of bills. "Here," she said, handing the money to him. "Get yourself something warm." The man looked up, surprised. His tired eyes softened, and a small smile appeared on his lips. "Thank you, Mom," he rasped. "You don't know how much this means." Evelyn smiled, feeling a lightness in her heart that hadn't been there before. She didn't know his name, but she felt like maybe, in some small way, she had helped. Eddie stood, the bills clutched in his hand as the rain continued to fall. His body ached from the cold, but the money in his hand gave him enough for a hot coffee and a meal. He made his way to a nearby diner, the warmth inside hitting him like a wave of relief. As he approached the counter, the barista smiled at him. Jake knew Eddie from his occasional visits, though Eddie never stayed long enough to chat. "Hey there, man," Jake said. "Coffee?" Eddie grinned. "Yeah, and maybe something to eat." As he sipped his coffee, Eddie started to hum quietly to himself. His deep, rich voice filled the diner, catching Jake's attention. The tune was soulful, and soon, Eddie found himself tapping his foot to the rhythm. Jake couldn't help but laugh. "You've got some serious rhythm there," Jake said. Eddie smiled wide, his face glowing with warmth. "Sometimes all it takes is a little music to brighten things up." Jake nodded, feeling a shift in his mood. The morning had started rough. A fight with his roommate had put him in a sour mood. But Eddie's energy was contagious. As Eddie finished his coffee and waved goodbye, Jake felt the tension in his shoulders ease. Maybe things weren't so bad after all. Jake left the diner later that afternoon. The rain now a light mist. His earlier frustrations had dissipated, and he felt ready to make amends. He pulled out his phone, shooting a quick message to his roommate, apologizing for the argument they'd had. He knew it wasn't worth staying mad, and life was too short for grudges. As he walked through the park on his way home, Jake saw a young woman sitting alone on a bench, staring at the ground. She looked lost in thought. Her shoulders slumped. Something about the way she sat reminded Jake of himself earlier that day. Without thinking too much about it, he approached her. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" The woman, Lucy, looked up, surprised by his kindness. "Yeah," she said softly. "Just having a tough day." Jake smiled, sitting down beside her. "I get that. We all have those days, but sometimes it helps to talk about it, or even just know someone's around." Lucy smiled, feeling the warmth of his words. They sat there for a few moments in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, one that made Lucy feel just a little less alone. Lucy watched Jake leave, feeling a little lighter. She didn't know his name, but his brief words had given her the strength to stand up and keep going. The heaviness of her day seemed to lift as she walked through the park, and her heart felt just a little less burdened. Later that evening, Lucy made her way to the music store where she worked part-time. It was a small place, but she loved it. She spent her shift helping customers, her mind still lingering on the conversation in the park. As the evening wore on, Lucy was surprised to see a familiar face walk into the store. He browsed the guitars, his usual spark missing. Lucy approached him, offering a warm smile. "Hey, Lucas, everything okay?" Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind. Thinking of canceling my show tonight. My drummer's sick, and I'm not sure if we can pull it off." Lucy frowned. "You've been planning this show for months. I know it's tough, but maybe you can make it work. Besides, people are counting on you. You've got a real gift, Lucas. Don't let one hiccup stop you." Lucas looked at her, surprised by her words. He had been feeling like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. But something about Lucy's encouragement reignited a spark inside him. Maybe he could make it work. The stadium buzzed with excitement, the lights dimming as the crowd waited in anticipation. Sally clutched her ticket, her heart pounding with excitement. She had traveled 5 hours just to see Lucas perform. And rumors had swirled earlier that the concert might be cancelled. But here she was, and the music was about to begin. As the first chords filled the air, Sally closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. It was everything she had hoped for. Across the stadium, Chris stood alone, clutching the ticket he had bought months ago for him and his ex-girlfriend. He had almost decided not to come. But now, surrounded by the energy of the crowd, he felt a sense of peace. The music wrapped around him, lifting the sadness from his heart. The camera panned across the audience, capturing the sea of faces, each one touched by the music. Each one finding connection in the shared moment. For Emily, who had been struggling with depression for months, the concert was a rare moment of joy. For Tom, it was an escape from the pressures of work. For Rachel, it was a reminder of the beauty that still existed in the world, even in the wake of losing her father. Each person in the crowd had their own story, their own reason for being there. And for each of them, the concert became a moment of healing, joy, and connection. Days later, Theo sat on the bus again, staring out at the rainy streets. The feeling of loneliness had returned, creeping in around the edges of his mind. He sighed, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. The bus jolted to a stop, and a woman sat down beside him. Theo glanced up, and his heart skipped a beat. "Hey," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Evelyn. You helped me the other day with my groceries." Theo blinked in surprise. "Theo," he replied, a small smile forming on his lips. "Nice to meet you, officially." They exchanged a few more words, and for the first time in a long while, Theo felt a connection, a real connection. The invisible threads of kindness that had started with him had come full circle, bringing a warmth back to his heart that he hadn't felt in a long time. As we come to the end of tonight's story, take a moment to reflect on the invisible threads that connect us all. Every small act of kindness, no matter how insignificant it may seem, can create ripples that reach far beyond what we can see. Just as Theo's simple gesture set off a chain of goodness, remember that your actions, no matter how small, can brighten someone else's world. Now, let go of the day's weight. Allow your body to relax into the bed, and let the calmness of this moment settle around you, like a gentle embrace. With each breath, feel yourself sinking deeper into the warmth of rest, knowing that tomorrow, you too have the power to make someone's world a little brighter. Good night.